Mixed opinions from LA Kings fans on changes for next season. We'll share that and more on this fan feedback edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, also co-host of Locked On NHL Game Night, a daily podcast and YouTube show that wraps up the night in the NHL, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Well, it is time for another Kings fan feedback show. We got a lot of emails this week regarding the direction of the team, regarding the dismissal of GM Rob Blake, regarding who the next head coach should be. And we got a lot of long emails, and I really appreciate the time that you guys take in sending your thoughts. But unfortunately, I did have to do some editing on a lot of the emails to try and make sure we get all of them into the show. I did my best to try and make sure that I included what I thought were your major points, but I hope you will understand that I had to kind of do that. So let's get right into it. And we start with Spike in Fremont. And he says, overall, like all true Kings fans, very disappointed and upset over the results. The team bought into what Jim Miller was selling. It was working, especially late in the season. Yeah, they were built for the playoffs, a deep run in the playoffs. 3 days later, I'm still pretty pissed off. As for Rob Blake, he earned an extension. These words aren't music to most fans, but he made some good deals before the year. Let's not forget the draft picks this year: Darcy Kemper, Andre Kuzmenko, Warren Fogle, among others. Also had some boners when he signed Cal Peterson to a big deal, but got out of it financially. Ditto for Pierre-Luc Dubois. The job of the general manager is to get the players for the head coach to work with. He did that. As for Jim Hiller, the playoff meltdowns on him. He's been gregarious with the media. He's not Daryl Sutter. He got the players to support what he was trying to do. Guys appear to like playing for him, but why is he so stubborn for staying the course regarding his bench management in the playoffs? Am I missing something? I hope he comes clean and acts like a hockey person and takes accountability. And he says, player miscellaneous. Kempe needs a long-term deal. Gavrikov needs to stay. He more than earned his money this season. Kuzmenko approved his worth late in the season and at the beginning of the playoffs. But why does someone get dealt 4 times in his career? Jeannot should also stay. Sadly, Lewis must go. His time is unfortunately past. Big Save Dave needs to find another team, but above all, don't blow this up. The team's young. They learned a very hard lesson this year. It will make them better. And that was from Spike in Fremont. I will agree, blowing this up is not an option. And anybody who thinks that's a good idea, I would strongly disagree with them. As you mentioned, this is still a very young team. As far as what they're going to do in the offseason, I would look at the possibility of trying to sign Mitch Marner before I did anything else. I do disagree a little bit with our friend Austin Stanovich, who was on the show this week when he said the Kings just need to kind of wait for Quentin Byfield and Brandt Clark to develop into marquee players. I don't think they can afford to wait for that. I think they need to go out and try and make the team the best it can possibly be. And while they can't get a player that's comparable to Connor McDavid or even Leon Draisaitl, I think going out and getting the best players that you can helps you get a lot closer. And I think Mitch Marner is a possible option. I don't know if he wants to come here. I don't know what it's going to cost necessarily to get him, but if the Kings should explore trying to get him. If that's not a possibility, then I would say plan B is re-sign Gavrikov. Maybe they can upgrade on Andre Kuzmenko with a right shot forward who's a little more consistent. But yeah, that would be my priority as far as improving the Kings for next year. Scott in Simi Valley checks in. He says, somehow we've already forgotten, so I wanted to redirect everyone's attention, not to games 3 and 4, but to game 1. The problem with the Kings playing on their heels in the third started then. It doesn't take a genius to notice the huge red flags that went up. Deneau's lucky knuckleball wasn't enough for me to forget how the Kings sat back miserably and certainly should have not been to Jim Hiller and the staff, who had the entire rest of the series to adjust and actually do their jobs and coach to prevent the late game collapses again. If not perfectly, then at least enough to win the series. The playoffs are where you see a player or coach's true colors, not the regular season. To hear Luke talk about what a great job Hiller did during the regular season is mere trivia now. It doesn't get the franchise anywhere. There are no excuses. Jim Hiller misused his bench, made horrible decisions, and then represented the franchise poorly with his unprofessional and defensive post-game rants. Like Austin Stanovich, I don't buy it for a minute that the players weren't directed to go into defensive shells in those third periods that were so sickening to watch. The Kings didn't even send one forechecker over the red line half the time. Do we really believe the coaching staff had nothing to do with that or had no power to change it? That's bull crap, and we all know it. Fire Hiller now before all the good coaching candidates are gone, and bring in a GM from outside who wants to kick ass first and be a nice guy after he gets results. Scott in Simi Valley. Well, I will say, Scott, for me, game one was more about Connor McDavid going off than the Kings sitting back. So I don't know that I saw any red flags from game one. I tend to agree with you and Austin about how the Kings played in the third periods in games 2 and 3, and that it was not just the players playing back, or, certainly, as you said, the coaches need to correct that. And whether you agree or disagree about game one, I think we could all agree about game 3. And after that, you don't allow that to happen again in game number 4. So look, I like Jim Hiller. I do think he did a great job during the regular season. I do think he failed miserably in the postseason. And sure, he could learn his lessons and be better next postseason if we get there. Because, you just can't assume that everything's going to happen next season just the way it did this season. So I do agree bringing in a more experienced coach that has had playoff success is probably a better option. Brian in Huntington Beach says, nothing thrills me more than to watch a crypto arena full of Kings fans and merchandise constantly selling out. The franchise is definitely profitable, and it's encouraging for the growth of the Kings fan base. Reminds me of the old Forum days during the Gretzky-McNall days. Unfortunately, to me, it appears the money and financial success has Roski and Anschutz complicit in turning the Kings into a more formidable team. Or complacent was right the first time. Constantly dominating regular season games and making the playoffs year after year just doesn't cut it. Kudos to Kings marketing for expanding the fan base with 17 to 18,000 in attendance at crypto throughout the season, but being unable to pass the first round playoffs in a decade is unacceptable. Kings leadership are taking a passionate fan base for granted, and I find it disrespectful. Unfortunately, I'm not holding my breath for any changes next season. I actually think Hiller did a fine job and made serious mistakes, but can improve. He definitely won't forget or repeat those mistakes. For everyone else in the chain of command above him, they will forget and repeat mistakes. That was Brian in Huntington Beach. I would say, Brian, I don't know that that's definitely true. And I think because, and a lot of people are mentioning this during this episode, that Hiller never really kind of said, you know what, I should have did this better. I should have did that better. So is he really learning from his mistakes? He really hasn't admitted that he made any mistakes. So I'm not completely sure about that. As for the ownership, wanting a profitable product, I mean, that's always the goal. I don't have a problem with them wanting to have a profitable business. That's what every owner wants. But I do think you can have the best of both worlds. I think you can have a profitable team and a well-run business and still be able to see progress as far as the team getting in the postseason and advancing at some point. So I would assume, you're looking to fire Luc Robitaille. I would think the hiring of the next GM is going to impact, and how that person does on the job will impact whether Luc Robitaille will be running the team much longer. This comes from Joe Powell. He's in parts unknown. He says, I'm age 75 and I began serious Kings fandom at age 18 at the Forum in 1967. So I had season tickets and I've been to many games and a regular viewer of the games on TV. I'm 100% on board with the Blake release, and also Hiller ought to go. I favor a fresh start with new ideas and expertise. The draft, free agent seasons, summer trade situations need new input from a new crew at the organization's top. Kopi is too old now, being 38 in December, to be a playoff first center and captain. He ought to retire. The GM should seriously persuade him to retire and pay him off. His playoff was mediocre and he failed to deliver for his team. He just looked very slow and tired, as well as very little, if any, passion to win. Drew deserves one more year, and then he goes to, the team needs 2 to 3 veteran playoff additions now. They need grinders and clutch people that just have the sheer toughness and attitude that they must win at all costs. And again, that was from Joe in parts unknown. I would say if you want to argue about Anze Kopitar not being a number one center, that's very understandable. But he was second on the team in points this regular season and in the playoffs. So is he far from being in his prime? Obviously, but he's not an anchor on this team either. He's got one more year in his contract. I think he'll likely retire after next season. I don't know that for a fact. I think it depends on the season he has and the season that the team has. But that said, I think he's the greatest LA Kings player of all time. I think he's earned the right to go out on his own terms for everything he's done for the organization. Plus, it's not like he can't play anymore. All right, we've got more emails coming up on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices, no console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 to Avowed, as easy as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controllers required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 2nd and 1st Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. We continue with the emails, and this is from Phil. He's in parts unknown. He says, I was bummed after the playoffs, but oddly, I still feel good. The Kings just had their best regular season ever. They consistently beat top teams, and there was a lot to enjoy, playoffs aside, which ultimately matters most. There's been a wave of negativity lately, and honestly, it doesn't surprise me, not because the team doesn't deserve it, but because your average Joe just doesn't get it. I sit in the 300s, I hear people yelling at players, coaches, and management, citing facts that are flat out wrong. People get loud with emotion, not with insight. For the positive fans out there, just remember, people are 15 times more likely to complain than to compliment, and there's no shortage of keyboard warriors who just need to be heard, whether they know what they're talking about or not. One other thought I've been chewing on, knowing how explosive McDavid and Draisaitl can be, are the Kings at a significant disadvantage facing them in round one. When that matchup gets locked in early, it gives Edmonton more time to game plan versus the second and later rounds where teams only have a couple of days to prepare. And while fatigue sets in for everyone, it hits differently when a team leans so heavily on just two players. Their ability to perform at their absolute peak fades over time, and that drop-off can significantly hamper their team success. Round one might actually be the toughest time to face them with that logic. Appreciate your time and everything you do for the Kings, for Kings fans. And again, that was from Phil in parts unknown. I mean, I do agree that more people are likely to complain than compliment. That said, I do think Kings fans have legitimate reasons to complain when it comes to the team and the postseason. There's always going to be, the outrageous opinions, especially on social media, but losing in the first round 4 years in a row to the same team, that's pretty legit reason to be frustrated and want to see better results. As for McDavid and Draisaitl, I mean, I'm sure they get more worn down as the playoffs go along, just like any other player. But are they their toughest to beat in the first round? I don't know. I mean, I would say at least this postseason, the Oilers didn't beat the Kings because of McDavid and Draisaitl necessarily. I thought it was more that the Oilers had more secondary scoring, that they had more support for McDavid and Draisaitl than any of us thought that they would have. And I think that's why they're in round number two. And they've actually continued that into round number two, where they lead the Vegas Golden Knights 2-0. It's not all about McDavid and Draisaitl so far. It's been a real team effort for the Oilers. John in Greensboro, North Carolina, formerly of Tokyo, says, as far as the Kings, making progress, is it about acquiring a star player like Matthews from Toronto or something else? They need a goalie who can be all world. Some of the goals allowed versus Edmonton were iffy in the postseason. Is it saying goodbye to Fiala or younger talent to get a veteran with strong scoring ability? I feel they have to build the roster to beat the Oil, and this iteration is not the answer. Well, I mean, Yeah, it would help to get an Austin Matthews from Toronto, but as Austin Stanovich said on this show, those guys don't get moved. Nathan McKinnon, Austin Matthews, those elite players, they only go if they want to go, like possibly a Mitch Marner this offseason. I don't agree with you about Darcy Kemper. I thought he had a great postseason. I don't think the answer is trading away Kevin Fiala or the younger talent. I think the answer is to improve where they can, and hopefully the younger players grow into a bigger role and continue to grow as far as their abilities. And hopefully that's the difference eventually. Demir, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, in Houston, originally from Russia, checking in. He says, longtime LA and Kobe fan. I still can't believe they lost in the first round again this year. Really felt like this year's team was going to be different. That being said, let me vent some frustration and thoughts regarding the team. Yes, there were mistakes by an inexperienced coach. Losing both games in Edmonton in that fashion was really tough, but that's when leaders should step up. And I feel like this year they failed to do so. It was just 2-2, and they still had home ice advantage, but game 5 was the worst. They were not ready, lost the game before it started, and completely lost belief in themselves, in their coach. Game 6 was just a formality at that point. Question, is their core good enough? They've done it before, but can they do it in 2026? If we can replace Kopi with Q, and it looks like he'll be good enough as a first center in the NHL. Doughty's situation looks like a problem. I get he was not 100%, but he was declining for years now. And will he ever be Doughty that we knew is a big question mark. And he's still got 2 more years with that $11 million average annual value. Their pair with Anderson was not good enough to contain Edmonton. Leaving Gabby as your bestie on the team, with all due respect, if he's your bestie, you're in trouble. They just can't wait until Kopi and Doughty's contracts run out and do nothing. It's the last year of a cheaper Kempe deal. It'll be harder to build a competitive team going forward, and rebuilding is not an option. What do you think about the right D situation in LA yourself? And that was Demir in Houston. Well, there's a lot to chew on there. I do think while, yes, you have Kopitar and Doughty, you also have one of the younger teams in the NHL playoffs this season. And you ask, is this core good enough? Well, I think the evidence would say no at this point. But again, it is still a younger team. I'm optimistic about Byfield, but he still has to put a full season together before, we should be completely convinced that this is going to be the team's number 1 center for years to come. He still has a lot to prove, but I'm encouraged. As for Doughty, I think he has to have his minutes reduced. I think Clark and Spence need to get more minutes next season to better prepare them for the playoffs. And I would take Drew Doughty completely off of the power play. I would have Clark run the number 1 power play unit. I'd have Spence run the number 2 power play unit going forward. Andrew in Lisbon, Portugal, originally from Ventura County. First off, thanks for all the work all season long. It really helped stay in the loop from afar. Watching the season end like that was a tough pill to swallow. Oh, how quickly fortunes can flip on a dime this time of year. My initial take on Hiller in the aftermath of games 3 and 4 was thinking about the great regular season, was how Byfield progressed and how Fiala matured. The home record, innovations like 5 forwards on the power play, etc. Nevertheless, a few days on from getting eliminated, each day I started wanting Hiller to get fired more and more. It's not so much the actual mistakes that he made, like with the challenge in game 3 being so obviously a bad situation in the moment, playing Doughty a criminal amount of minutes, or not giving ice time to the younger guys. He can learn from all those decisions being a young coach. Rather, it was his demeanor in the post-game press conferences that got me and kept eating away at me as the season unraveled before our eyes. He took zero accountability. It's way better to say you screwed up and defend your players versus barking back at the press and not even acknowledging that he could have done things differently. Not rolling 4 lines is absolutely inexcusable. I can't think of a single team in recent memory that ever made a deep run without rolling 4 lines and 6 defensemen. You have to live and die by that because you have no chance to win if you don't. If your 4th line isn't good enough, then so be it. I can't handle the lack of accountability. I have a hard time believing he didn't lose the locker room after games 3 and 4. Props to Hiller on the regular season, but it's not cutting it anymore. My preferred choices are Gerard Gallant or Peter Laviolette. Go Kings go, and thanks again, Eddie. And again, that was Andrew in Lisbon, Portugal. Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate that, and I'm glad I could keep you updated on what's going on with the team from afar. I think everything you said is very fair. I think it's reasonable to be upset that Jim Hiller never seemed to acknowledge his mistakes. And that's the thing that concerns me. We can all sit here and say, well, he'll learn from that and he'll be better next time. But if he doesn't think he did anything wrong, then is he really learning from his mistakes? That's what concerns me about it. I think Peter Laviolette would be my number one choice as the Kings' next head coach if I was in charge, which I am definitely not. Robert in Hawthorne says, I appreciate the fine work you did all season. I believe it might take a coach who is a proven Stanley Cup winner to get this team to the finals or even to win it all next year. My question is for you, do you honestly think that the players will buy into Hiller's hockey philosophy next season if he remains coach of the Kings? You're totally disappointed, diehard Kings fan who believes in the team, not any of the present coaches. And again, that was Robert in Hawthorne. I mean, it's really hard for me to say if Jim Hiller has lost the room because I'm not in the room. I think the players said all the right things in the postseason media exit interviews. I can only take them at their word. I do think they like Jim Hiller. I think that they'll still play hard for him, but I can't imagine that there aren't a significant number of players who were completely okay with everything he did in the playoffs. I do think, though, that they also share the responsibility because coaches coach and players play. So I think, whether they can ultimately be successful together remains to be seen. I don't think he's lost the room, but I do think that there had to have been questions from some of the players. Brian in Los Alamitos checks in. He says, I really enjoyed your interview with Austin Stanovich. His views on the team were really insightful and smart. Like Austin, I don't really buy the line about how it's instinctive to go into a defensive shell when leading in a game. What's instinctive is to keep playing the way you scored your goals. With regards to Rob Blake, I also believe he was planning to step down no matter what at the end of the season. And I think Luke knew this for the most part. I think Luke knew this for most, if not the entire season. Therefore, I have to believe Luke already has a successor in mind who's ready to take over. There'll be no searching. There'll be no interviews. They'll just wait long enough to give the appearance that they're actually considering other candidates before they make their announcement. The Ducks just hired Joel Quenneville. I think he would have been just what the Kings needed, but instead the Kings are going to keep things in-house and recycle the old ideas. Thanks for all your hard work this season and this week. Go Kings. And again, Brian in Los Alamitos. Well, for what it's worth, Brian, you probably saw this already. I'm pretty sure you sent your email before this came out, but the Kings reportedly interviewed former Oilers and Red Wings general manager Ken Holland. He was GM of the Red Wings in the late 90s and early 2000s. He built 3 Stanley Cup winners. Luc Robitaille played for him on that 2002 Stanley Cup winning team in Detroit. So apparently they are actually going through the interview process. How serious that is, who's to say? All right, we've got some more emails to get to. We're speeding through it here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's in-game, a winning shot, or a breakout player, there is never a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and during the live action with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Which players are showing up in the biggest moments, and how could tracking their trends help you build your next bet? What would it look like to combine live prop bets mid-game based on how the action unfolds? If you've got a read on who's heating up, why not back it up with a same-game parlay? How could a $200 bonus in bets add to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits? New to FanDuel? It's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Peter in Vail, Colorado, checking in. He says, now that I've had a week to reflect on the Kings' disappointing loss to Edmonton, here are some hard truths I think Kings fans need to accept. Despite all the commentary leading up to the series, the Kings were not the deeper team. The Kings were afraid to play their fourth line and bottom 2 defensemen. Clearly, our so-called depth was not a strength. The Kings were severely outcoached. Yes, the Kane goal challenge was a bad mistake, but it goes way beyond that. What distinguishes the playoffs from the regular season is that you play the same team multiple times in a row. A good coach makes adjustments. I don't care what the players say about it being human nature to sit back when you have a lead. If it was not Hiller's strategy, they should have immediately corrected the passive way they were playing in every third period. Instead, the Kings just waited for them at their own blue line, let them gather speed, and come up the ice virtually untouched. In over 50 years of watching NHL hockey, I've never seen a more passive and less effective strategy. I generally agree with the consensus on Rob Blake. He had good moves and bad moves. He was fine, just not good enough. I do think, however, the team needs to move on from its alumni culture. As much as Luc Robitaille was a great left wing, great LA King, has been a great ambassador for the franchise. With all due respect to both Robitaille and Blake, and most of the other alumni in management, Nelson Emerson, Glenn Murray, none of them ever won anything as a player on the Kings. If the team is to be successful, it should purge the organization of alumni who did not win the cup with the Kings. I don't know who the new general manager should be, but if it is one of the internal candidates, Bergevin, Emerson, I feel we are for more years of frustration. The new GM should make the decision on the coach. The record says Jim Hiller did a good job during the regular season, but his inability to make adjustments in the playoff series and his decision not to play a full lineup were very costly. It is all the more troubling that he has not admitted that the passive strategy and the shortening bench were both mistakes. And that was Peter in Vail. Peter, you talked about the alumni culture, and I understand what you mean, but I do think at times it can also be a good thing. I think Rob Blake cared more about the LA Kings than, say, Ken Holland ever would. Now, does that guarantee that he's going to do a better job than someone else? No, but I do think it's more than a job if you have deep roots in the organization. Where you get into trouble is if you're just hiring people because they're a part of the family. And I think we should acknowledge, I don't think the Kings are a poorly run organization, but they've come up short in the playoffs too often. But I don't know that that's necessarily evidence that, this culture they have of employing former players is necessarily what's holding them back. Scott in Buena Park says, I know most Kings fans are unhappy right now because we did not progress in the playoffs. I am not too disappointed in the first round loss because I am happy with this year's progress in the team. There are two main reasons for my optimism. Reason one is Quinton Byfield's development. For the last third of the season, he was the top center on the team. Not only did he start winning more draws, but his line started to produce like a number one line should in the NHL. We can all look at the stats and agree on this. Next year, Q should have an A on his jersey. It's time. The second reason is Jim Hiller. I know this will not go over well with some Kings fans, but hear me out. Hiller is very unconventional. I do not agree with everything he does. I personally think he is the reason for the first round loss. That being said, I want him back next year. Let him learn from his playoff mistakes. When he was hired full-time last summer, I thought it was a mistake, and he didn't show much difference with Todd McClellan. Just look at everybody's preseason rankings for the Kings, a fringe playoff team that might not make it to the playoffs. Everybody was wrong on that, and he did change his coaching stance during the season. If you listen to the team's exit interviews and the last interview with Jim Fox on Locked On LA Kings, the team seemed to embrace Hiller. I say give him one more year to see if he can adjust for the playoffs. I want the Kings to hire Mark Yannetti as GM. Do you think that will happen? And once again, that was Scott in Buena Park. First off, I would say I do not see Quinton Byfield getting a letter on his sweater yet. I think he still is learning to be a complete pro player. I don't think he needs any extra pressure at this point. Someday, sure, but I don't think now. I honestly don't know if Mark Yannetti wants to be the general manager of the Kings. That is to say, is that ultimately what he wants to do? I don't know. I've never heard him say he has. I haven't heard every interview he's ever done or if he's been asked the question, but I think he's very good at what he does. If you don't know, he's the Kings director of scouting, but is he looking to be a GM one day or not? I don't know the answer to that. If the answer is yes, I think that I would hope that he would at least get an interview for the job. Gary in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, checking in. He says, my gut is telling me if the Kings go with a first-time NHL GM, Mike Fuda should be the guy. He has ties to the Cup years. He's been away long enough to have some fresh eyes. He was an OHL coach, an under-17 Team Canada coach, a junior Team Canada GM, Owen Sound Attack GM, Ontario Reign GM, and Kings director of scouting and assistant GM. If they look outside the organization, my thoughts are Matthew Darsh, assistant GM in Tampa. He was the Lightning director of hockey operations for 3 years before becoming assistant GM and is relatively young at 48 years old. Go Kings, go. And that was Gary in Coeur d'Alene. Well, Mike Fuda clearly wants the job. He's said as much multiple times on social media. I still don't know completely what the circumstances were around him leaving the team. Did he leave on good terms? If so, I see no reason why he shouldn't at least get an interview. Matthew Darsh, for people that don't know, his name always comes up whenever there's a GM vacancy. So I don't know much about him either, other than his name always comes up when there are GM availabilities. Andy in Guelph, Ontario says, loved this week's episodes, especially with Austin Stanovich. I am in the camp of no Bergevin. Perhaps I'm biased living in the Eastern time zone of Canada and having many Habs fans as friends. I see a report about Ken Holland. What are your thoughts on this? I personally would love to see Mike Fuda take over with Dustin Brown as his assistant general manager. And that was Andy in Guelph. I think Dustin Brown is pretty happy being a hockey dad for now. Maybe when his kids grow up and leave the nest, maybe that's something he would think about doing, but I don't know that he's interested in that. I mean, Ken Holland has an impressive resume. We talked about it earlier. He constructed those dynasty years in Detroit, won 3 Stanley Cups. He's also 69 years old. So, when you talk about new ideas and fresh eyes, I don't know that necessarily he's that guy, but he does have a very impressive resume. Our final email comes from Ed in Brea. He says, I just want to chime in on the GM that it was the right decision since the Kings have not won a playoff series in a decade and then some. Rob Blake had many ups and downs. Best move to me was getting back Darcy Kemper. Worst move, the Cal Peterson contract. As for Jim Hiller, I have to guarantee he'll be back as head coach for at least one more season. He did a wonderful job in the regular season, tying franchise mark for wins and points. However, poor situational hockey coaching in the playoffs have made me not confident. I'd like to see them hire Jay Woodcroft, former Oilers head coach, as an assistant to help us beat the Oilers. Other head coaches like Laviolette are a good choice to get the team a playoff round win. As for the GM, I hope Mike Fuda returns since he was an assistant GM to Dean Lombardi during our Cup season. That was Ed in Brea. Is Ed working his guarantee voodoo on getting Jim Hiller out as head coach? Thank you to everyone who took the time to email this week. I'm sorry that we kind of flew through it, but again, and editing some of the emails, but I wanted to try and get everybody's opinions in as much as I could. This show, obviously, literally not. I can't do this show without you sending emails. Is what I'm trying to say. I don't know why I'm having a hard time saying it, but for everybody that emailed, thank you for taking the time to do it. Appreciate all your thoughts. Appreciate you sharing your passion as Kings fans. Thank you. For you everydayers, those who listen and watch Locked On Kings every day, coming up, we'll certainly be doing a deeper dive on what the latest news is as far as the Kings GM search. We'll also be looking at players and evaluating them from this past season and looking at them moving forward, and any other LA Kings news that is coming out as well. If you want to send an email for a future feedback show or for any other reason, the email is lockedoneddie@gmail.com. We love if you leave the comments if you're watching on YouTube in the comments section, and stay interactive with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you as always for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings go. That's the wrong button.